Welcome, everyone, to the John Gardina classroom. I have a very special guest from the West Coast, Sacramento, California. His name is Derrick Wells, and he has been doing podcasting for almost 2 years, the Why Not You podcast. He started a newsletter. He's John C. Maxwell trained up. He's got a great vibe. When I was reading over all his bio, I thought I was reading about myself, but about just
That's
how much
right.
just how much passion you have, Derrick, for serving people, loving people, and helping them get out of the rut that they may be in life. So, Derrick, welcome to the classroom, brother.
Man, thank you for letting me be in this classroom. I
That's right.
definitely appreciate it, man.
This is a little different from your probably education growing up of a formal way of education. This is free, open. I'm not going to hit you with a stick. I'm not going to,
Right.
throw erasers at you or send you to the principal's office. This is a very open forum where you get to be you and just show everyone today what makes you tick today. So, Derrick,
Right.
again, thank you for being on, my man.
Hey, John, I mean, I bet if I was, if I had a classroom like this growing up, I probably would have got better grades.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I never really thrived in the formal education system. That's why sports was an outlet for me.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's why it's nice that I can be the instructor here. And just the best part is you being the student on the classroom. Guess what? You're going to teach everyone what you have learned to help them in their lives. So let's get started. Ready?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yep.
I mean, the first question I really have is like, what happened in your life that made you just say like, you know what, I'm going to go all in helping people? When did that happen in your life?
Man, it had to, I noticed it like early on, um, when I started a janitorial business when I was attending school at Sac State. And here I am, man, I'm cleaning this restaurant. And it was like 2:30 in the morning, just somewhere around there. But it was early in the morning, and this homeless guy ends up being outside, and he's asking for some money, he's asking for some food. I was like, hey, stand by. I have like 20 minutes left of cleaning this restaurant. Man, we go get something to eat.
Nice.
And so he waited for me to finish cleaning this restaurant, and we go to Caro's, which is, I don't even think Caro's exists anymore. But we go there, and he orders up some food, I order up some food, and we just get to talking. And while we're talking, he was like, my journey hasn't always been like this. He said he used to work for one of the local stations out here, which is KCRA Channel 3. Um, and the crazy thing about it, he still had his ID badge. He graduated from Sac State
Wow.
in communications. And what happened to him was he ended up going out to Vegas one weekend with some friends, got hooked on cocaine, and that was his demise. And just from that conversation, I was like, wow, what a remarkable story, but a testimony to like what can actually happen. Even though we have it all together, things just happen to us, and we think we might have control of the situation. Like he said, he thought I had control of how much cocaine I use. I had no idea I was going to get addicted, but that actually led me to down the path of like, wow, there's so many people out there that actually need us, but you have to be in a position where you can actually express that love. And that
Wow.
part right there took some work, but at the same
Man,
time, you can always give and serve.
that's crazy that you said that story, because just before we got on the air, I was scrolling through Instagram like you usually do, looking for a good reel. And I'm not lying when I make this up. The last one I saw was of a former homeless man telling a story about how he was going to commit suicide at McDonald's, and this guy bought him lunch, and it changed his perspective on life, that he didn't take his life that day, and now he has a family and he's serving people.
Wow.
So, God sends messages sometimes, and having watched that video and now hearing your story of how you connected with this homeless man, it's powerful.
It is.
And that was when the spark, you'd say, or the root was planted from that time, right?
Yep. I would say so. I would say
How
so.
old were you, Derrick?
I think at that time, let's see, my daughter was born. I was probably like 27, 28.
Okay.
Yep.
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So then you're working there, you have this experience, and then go ahead.
Uh,
Propel us to the next stage of what
and
happens in your life.
so so from there it goes to connecting with some men at church, and you already know how that goes. You always get
I
drafted,
do.
right?
Oh yeah.
You
I
get
love it.
drafted into some kind of ministry. Uh, I'm that kind of
Yeah,
person.
yeah, I like that. Drafted. I like that. Yeah, that happens a lot where I'm at too.
Right. So it's like, okay, you hear about all these different ministries, but you want to do something that you feel comfortable doing, something that aligns with your personality. And then the people also, they have to have that right kind of personality so you can vibe with them. And so I got involved with the youth ministry, and I remember it was three of us, three males, myself, my buddy Greg Puckering, and Steve. I can't remember Steve's last name, and then our the leader,
Mhm.
the ministry youth leader. His name was Tom, and Tom was like, he was so cool, man, because he was all about giving us the flexibility to minister and to teach the youth, according to our personality. He wasn't trying to be scripted, kind of like what we talked about earlier, just having some script. And he's like, man, just be open with the youth, because the more open and transparent you are, the more you're going to be able to connect with them. And so then that led me down the path of just working with youth. And I did that for, man, it was quite a few years until Tom ended up leaving the church. He ended up going to Dallas. He ended up transferring out to Dallas and for work, and he attended what's that seminary out there? I can't remember. It
Oh,
might be Dallas Theological.
yeah.
But anyways, he ends up leaving, and next thing you know, 2009 approaches, and there's a Thrive conference out at one of the local churches out here at Bayside, and this church, this Thrive conference, they end up having Miles McPherson, from the Rock. I think his church is called the Rock down in San Diego, and John Maxwell end up being there. And Miles McPherson, I love what he talked about, because one of the things he talked when he was talking, he was speaking about ministry, doing outreach work, and how important it is to reach the people who are what we might call marginalized. And so one of their big ministries was working with prostitutes. And so he did he did just like a quick analysis of how many homeless shelters like were like in the 5 mile radius of this church that he spoke at. He was like, there's none. He was like, then I did a search of like how many Starbucks you guys have like within a 5 mile radius, and he kicked off some crazy number. And of course, it seemed like the church didn't like it.
Of course not.
Because
Right.
because a lot of times you get homeless people in your community, you try to, you just tend to push them out. Um, but then John Maxwell gets on stage, and he's talking about connecting with people. At this time, his book came out, Everyone Communicates, but Few Connect. I was like, what a powerful title for a book. And so he's talking and he's speaking, and he's so conversational, and in his delivery, you feel like you're one of his best friends, right? When he's talking.
He has a gift
He
as a
does, right?
former pastor that he was for and started with leadership. But
Yeah,
John C. Maxwell, if you haven't read or listened to anything by John C., man, he is very persuasive, very charismatic. And
he
like you
is.
said, it feels like you're just in a conversation with him. And the one thing he taught me reading some of his books was the art of the pause.
Right.
Just sitting there in that silence and instead we use the word pausals like like the or whatever
Mm-hmm.
between your dialogue. Just sit there and
Right.
let it roll. So John
That's
C., besides being a master of communication and leader, and a man of faith. He's done a lot of good work. So go ahead.
Yes.
So you were inspired by John C.'s conversation that day, huh?
Yeah, I was. And that, I already had like his leadership Bible, but it was just something you could hear and listen to somebody, through video, YouTube, or whatever it is. But when you're actually in the presence of a person, it's like now you feel that person's energy, and you could feel like the love that he actually has for the people that he's speaking to. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I picked up a book, and I actually had him, autograph the book. And I was actually kind of surprised, y'all, because I was like, man, it seems like more people should know about John Maxwell, and they should like want to be able to get his autograph and at least ask him a question. Right.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely would want
Right.
to.
Yeah. And one of the things he said, that he talked about, that just lets me know that, we are more powerful than we actually think we are, and more people really want to hear what we have to say, is when he talked about his book, and he mentioned going to a speaking event that he had, and these people are asking him, man, your material is so fresh and new, where you get it from? He's like, I could tell you, but you might
It's
not really.
classified, right?
Yeah,
It's
basically,
classified.
you really don't want to know. And so he said he said he was asked this question up to 3 times, and he said he finally told him. He said, I get my material from the Bible, and this is where I be. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to come and we could talk about it. And he said, man, there was a line out the door, and
Man,
it just lets you know like how powerful is the gospel.
it's changed billions of people's lives. That's how
Right.
powerful it is.
It is, right.
And it's funny that you say that story, and I don't know if he was doing it not to bring in his faith or the Bible itself, but it is and this is from, I don't know if you know Jordan Peterson. Most people do,
Hmm.
but he went through this transformation process when his wife was sick, and then he now has this whole argument of how the Bible is literally the root of how moral civilizations live.
That's
And
true.
it's because it's the truth. And Jesus says in John 14:6, I am the way, the
Right.
light and the truth. So
And the
if you
truth.
listen to his words, you don't have, I call it and I'll end here, is basically when you have the authenticity of the word
Hmm.
and words that are given by God and the Holy Spirit, and they're always a living words, right? Throughout the
Right.
gospel. Man, what
I
other
know,
book
right?
do you need to go to get?
Exactly.
Hey, come on. So John C. Maxwell, good for you to say that. So you're inspired. You felt the Holy Spirit, I'm sure. You hear John C. Maxwell. You're just this aura about him, this energy,
Right.
and it just goes in a direction of like, man, I want that energy. I want to be around it, and how could I get more of it, right?
Right. Right. And, you know, that event was in 2009,
Mhm.
2012. I ended up getting a divorce. And so here I am, like, just kind of like battling, because at that point, I mean, it's like, man, here I have, I've made this commitment to God, and I've broken my commitment to Him. I've broken my commitment to my wife at the time. And then we really don't think about like how it's going to affect us in the long run, because we could just make decisions and we don't even think about the consequences of like who it's going to impact, and we later on find out who it impacts afterwards. And our families were to, I mean, look, we had a family, a blended family for 12 years, and now all of a sudden it's no longer there. And so here I am just like having to process all this information and struggling with my own self-worth, identity. Can God still use me? And of course, we hear about other stories. We hear about stories of other people and how they've been able to come through and they're doing amazing things from God. But when it affects you personally, of course, you just you have this stink. It's like
Yeah.
you just think of yourself as less, like I'll never be able to get to this point, or God will never be able to use me. When, dude, all that is just our minds going haywire, and it's not what God actually says. And it takes you a minute sometimes just to go back to the truth.
Well, like anyone, analogy I always use is to get to the mountain peak, you got to be in the valley, and the valley is the toughest part of your life, and you have to make a decision. You can live in the valley with negative self-talk, having the
Right.
devil deceive your thoughts,
Exactly.
or you can go through the struggle, which is that refining process, the transformation process, which isn't easier,
Yeah,
but you know in your heart it's the right path,
that's right.
the one that God gave you. And that's, you put in your notes too. It was Jeremiah 29:11. Is that what it was?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
trying to go back to your notes. Yeah, I was right. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you,
Yeah.
plans to give you hope in the future. Man,
Right.
if that's not just boom, right to the
I know, right?
fact of what God has in store for you,
Yeah.
then I don't know what is. And I think what you're saying is so clear, Derrick, is that and this goes for everyone who's listening,
Hmm.
you might be in that valley. You might be going through a divorce. You might go through losing a job or a hard time in your life. And Derrick's going to tell you what happened after. So go ahead, Derrick.
That's right.
I'm building you up, baby. That's what I'm
That's
here
right.
for.
Sometimes, we have to start elevating ourselves. I know a lot of people don't like Kanye, but Kanye is like, dude, I have to be my biggest fan sometimes.
you do. You
You
do.
do. You do. Um, and so that whole journey for me, man, that took me a minute. And I knew, and at this time, I'm still working. So, I work for the sheriff's department. And at this time I haven't even gone out to patrol yet. I'm just still just trying to navigate my whole feelings. I'm like, man, what am I gonna do? I'm starting to like travel the different countries, just trying to
Oh,
like,
wow.
just trying to find some kind of like peace and solace. But of course, that can only come from God. He's the only one that can fill that void. And so I knew that s- I was being pulled. I was like, something was just saying, like, you need to go back to school and get your master's, go back to school and get your master's. And I was like, yeah, um, but not really sure like which direction. I didn't want to do like any traditional type stuff. Um, I didn't want to do leadership like a lot of the guys in our department does. Most of the time, those guys who do that, they're doing it just to promote and move up the rankings. Uh, but I wanted, man, it had to be meaningful. And I'm talking with a pastor friend. He was like, why don't you think about going to the Fuller Seminary? I was like, no, dude, I'm not going to no seminary, because if I go to seminary, that means
Oh, that's
the first
good.
thing people think about seminary, like you've been called to preach or whatever, or you got
Yeah.
to be a pastor. And I was like, nah, that's not the case. I'm not doing that. Uh, so I take the time and I start researching, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna check out Fuller. And I saw a couple of programs that I was interested in. It was intercultural studies, and by this time it's like 2014, and I end up going back. I was like, man, let me check out some other schools first. And they didn't have like anything close to like intercultural studies. It was all about Masters of Divinity. And I was like, so I ended up going back to Fuller. And I'd say the thing that I did not like about Fuller at the time was that it was one of their main campuses in Pasadena. So this would have been like a off campus, like satellite type of school. And they had the classroom in this church in the upstairs building, or upstairs unit. Almost looked like a closet, man. Like two closets were put together. It was super small. And I was like, no, this is not appealing. I'm done. I'm through. So I just let some time go by, but it was still in the back of my mind. And later on, they ended up opening up a cool satellite office. Went there, checked out a class, I was like, okay, this is it. This is it. And man, I went through that process. And so this is the thing. So this is a crazy thing. And it kind of scared me because the same person that told me about Fuller, they said, your faith is either going to get stronger or you're just going to walk away because you're going to experience some things. You're going to meet some people and it's probably going to rock your world. And of course I was like, okay, whatever. We'll see when this, when this, my turn to cross this road, I'll know for
Well,
sure.
no, that's good, Derek, because just like we were talking earlier about my son in baseball, and I was saying like, the along your journey, you're gonna either have more passion for something or less passion, and you move on to something else. And it sounds to
Absolutely.
me like you went with the full passion route, if I'm correct,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Well, good. So you start there in 2014, is that
15,
correct?
15.
15.
Yep.
Okay. And then how
And
long did it take you to go through your master's program?
4 years.
Okay.
4 years.
Awesome. So 2019, just before COVID hits, you're
2019.
like, man, I'm a champion. I got my master's. I'm doing
Yep.
great.
Yep.
And then what happens? Then what happens? I'm ready for it.
So just like real brief, it was in this Old Testament class. I had two defining moments when I was at that school. One was an Old Testament class, and our professor said, okay, everybody has to write their own psalm. I was like, my own
Wow.
psalm? You mean like David? Come on. It was like everybody has to write their own psalm. And he says,
Like
use the
this.
psalms as a reference. I was like, okay. And I was like, man, that was probably like the most transparent, humble feeling I ever had, like with God. Because he already knows everything that we feel, everything that we go through, our attitude, our behavior, the characteristics. But being in a place where I could like just share with God from the heart and write it on paper is totally different. It's totally different. And
That's
so
amazing.
man, I wrote that song and I just started off by, Father God, you know who I am kind of thing. Even when I feel like hatred in my heart towards something, you still love me. And man, it was, dude, I just poured it out on paper. And so that was one defining moment. And then the next one was, of course, our spiritual formation class when I got the idea, or like it was the revelation of evangelism. And of course, you just never know how that's going to come out. But it's years later, here we are with the podcast, sharing God's love and talking with other people and incorporating faith into that and inspiring people. So,
Dude, it's amazing how God works.
yeah.
And we go back to the valley where you're in 2012, you had this divorce, you're traveling, you're trying to get your head straight. And then you start getting out of this valley, you start climbing the mountain by seeking this passion, or at the time you didn't know it was, this seminary,
Yeah.
and getting your master's. And what is your is it in the theology?
No, it's in intercultural studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Intercultural
What you
studies.
intended to do right from the
Mm-hmm.
get-go.
Right.
But during this journey, you take these two classes, Old Testament and spiritual formation.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, I mean, I read Psalms every night. And I mean, if anyone has not read Psalms through, or if you read the Bible through, I mean, go back to Psalms.
Right.
It is so rich because I feel like David's heart throughout the Psalms is just like poured out, ripped, torn apart,
Yep.
he repents, laments, asks for God's grace from being saved, from being killed, and like all. It's literally
It is, right?
it's it's almost like I'm thinking of a movie series where it's like probably 20 some movies long of playing it out of David in his life.
Yeah.
And the one thing I know from reading Psalms and is that God chose the son of Jesse because of his heart, not by his looks,
Yep.
not by his status, but he knew his heart. And the biggest thing I could tell everyone on the show as well is, like, once you have that relationship with Christ and he knows it, that's it.
That's it.
That's when it starts. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let you go ahead and, since you have the evangelism in you too, just talk about your podcast and how you felt the Holy Spirit working on you to do this and to do the good works through this means of communication.
Yeah. So one of the people I always reference the most that I feel like I identify with is Moses.
Yeah.
Because Moses would come up with the excuse after he was given this huge assignment.
Well, all right, here I love Moses because I'm actually going through a program I wrote called 40 Days of Deliverance.
Oh wow.
It's basically being like the stiff-necked Israelites that they were.
Yeah.
But people may not know this. It was 40 years that he was in Egypt, Moses.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Then it was 40 years that he was in the desert. Then he got married. And then he was called from the mountaintop to go back and free his people.
Right.
And then, as we know too, it was 40 years in the desert, but he didn't get to see the promised land because of not his obedience.
Right.
Can you imagine it? Almost 120 years old. He strikes the rock.
Yeah.
Doesn't get to see the promised land. It's not for you, Moses. You were disobedient to what I said.
Yeah.
And he's like, God. So,
and it was something small too. You would think it's small, but at the same time, God said, "Don't do it," and you did it.
He did it. It was, oh man. All right, yeah. Okay, I get the vibe of Moses. All right, go ahead. Yeah, a little side story there for everyone.
So Moses, I think one of the main things was, I was like, here Moses is, he's at this age and he's given this assignment. And so many people think that age is the telltale to whether or not they can do something. And it's not the case. I think that's just a mindset that people actually impose on themselves. Who cares? Because I mean, we all hear stories of people graduating, getting their degree at 70 and 80 years old. So if they could do it, you could do it as well. And he's
well, wait, what's that phrase you use? Why not you, right?
Why not you, right?
Right?
Why not you? Why not you?
Doesn't matter your age,
No.
demographic, doesn't matter where you live, location.
Yeah.
Why not you? And I love that. Keep going.
Yeah.
This is good, man.
And so one of my favorite scriptures is Hebrews 12. I think it's 12:11. No discipline is easy. No discipline seems. Oh snaps! Here we go.
I got you.
Here we go.
I got you. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Right.
But later on, it produces a harvest of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And so you just think about any type of athlete, anybody who's successful in their endeavor. They stuck through it. They developed some kind of routine. They did the things that they didn't want to do, whether it was getting up early in the morning, working out, eating right, reading some books, listening to some audio, getting those reps in. That's that discipline. And so it's like, how bad do you want it? And so it just kind of came to me as I'm like just reading Moses, or just Moses, Noah, and all these other people of faith. Is like, one person could really make a difference. It's just God is just looking for able bodies. And so once you start relying on him, he got you. He has you. And so as I'm just kind of going through my own personal journey, reflecting on Moses and all these other people of faith, it's like God gave me this idea. And he gave me this idea for a reason. And if he's giving me an idea, or for anybody else an idea, he's giving it to you because he has your back. It's just a matter of you taking that action and following through. So it was, even though I was a little apprehensive, of course, because you just think about, man, this is huge. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this, Lord? Because one, I already feel like I'm not the best speaker.
But you are.
Yeah.
No, but you are though.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you're giving me, God's putting a verse on me right now, and it's from Exodus. It's Exodus 14:14. Is the Lord will fight for you.
Yeah.
all you need to do is be still. But what, to me, I'm interpreting that as Moses or whoever, be still and hearing the will of God. But then the second part is the Jeremiah 29:11,
Right.
it's like you're going to take action though now.
Yeah.
Now it's action on the gifts God gave you.
Yeah.
And I look at the book you have behind you of Tim Grover, Relentless, and my friend Kevin from the UK, is one of his words in his mission statement is to be relentless. And I think if we're relentless using our gifts for God's will, you win.
Yeah.
You win.
You win. Absolutely.
We win. Everyone wins, right?
Yeah. You do.
So I think you are being obedient. What I hear you saying is that you are being obedient to what God was calling you to do. And the hardest thing is we have this doubt creep into us, the self-talk and
right.
And then all of a sudden you get started. And go ahead, when you started this journey of podcasting and your newsletter, like describe how that felt for you and then the process maybe.
I think initially, I was like, man, I was waiting for the perfect time.
Oh, I ain't never gonna happen.
For real,
Number
right?
one.
I felt like I needed like the perfect backdrop, but then I wasn't. And so this is the crazy thing was I wasn't posting anything on YouTube at the time, but however I still wanted something in the back. So if I do some type of clips, I wouldn't be looking tore up.
You want to be fresh. I get you. I get it. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
I understand.
And so one of my friends, who's more like he's like a coach now. He's like, dude, you are frustrating the mess out of me right now because I see so much potential. You just need to get started. Just do something. And then once I got started, of course, that's when the ball started rolling. He's like, you know what, man, it's not as bad as I thought. And it's just that's when the confidence starts to come in. And I'm like, okay. And then you start having people, because the first episode I did, it was delayed by like an hour because I was having like all kind of technical difficulties. The Zoom was everything was just falling apart. I felt like
that's the devil coming in and saying,
right.
You're not worthy, Derrick.
Yeah,
this is not for you. And you're
For
like,
real.
Shut up, devil. I'm going after it. Dude, I'll tell you what, man, I've had that happen so many times and I get so discouraged. Like everyone's looking at my product and it's crap. And then guess what you did?
Yeah.
You were relentless.
Exactly.
Right. And you kept going.
And
they got better.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, from there it was like, okay, now I want to talk to, so the main premise in the beginning was talking with people who are doing what they love to do.
Perfect.
And then have them share the challenges that they had, the ways they overcame, what they're doing now and how they're impacting other people. Even though I was doing that, it was like, I kind of felt like in the back of my mind, like, God was like, dude, that's not what I said. Initially when we talked about this, I was supposed to be like the focal point. It was more about me.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah,
you got it. So, so then I changed it up to being all about transformation. But incorporating just whether it was self-awareness, habits, mentors, pretty much the same type of style, but just more God and Jesus. I think that had to be, in order for me to be successful to my own definition of success, which is doing all I can for God with what He's given me and to maximize my potential, and actually live beyond what I actually think I can do. And that way I know that it wasn't from me, it's from God, because I already think that I'm limited in some areas, but at the same time, and when doors start opening up and next thing you know, you're elevated. I mean, you can't give nobody the glory except for God.
No, all the glory to Him. I mean, I think God puts people in your life too to help season you, to help grow you.
Yeah.
And I love that word transformation. So I know what it means to me. What if you were to tell someone what that's one of your missions, right, is to help
Right.
transform individuals. Explain to me a little further, like what that means to you to help someone in that transformation process.
Well, I think it kind of started like just from my own personal journey, from knowing, man, here I am, divorced, and I know sometimes we have to move out of the past to get into the present, and that takes work. And being self-aware for me was just knowing what I was capable of doing, knowing my strengths and weaknesses, not trying to do something that, oh, this person says you're good at this, so maybe you should go that route. But no, that's not what God called me to do. Um, Even though that could be more lucrative financially, that's still not what God called me to do. Uh, so putting myself in a position where it almost took me back to 2015 when I wrote that song. Okay, this is who I am. This is what God says. This is who God says I am.
Sorry.
I need to get on his page and get out of my own head, um, and then start moving. And so it just started with the self-awareness piece. Um, Man, association was huge, reading, developing that relationship with him more, getting to a place where I can actually trust, um, because I feel like I broke my own trust when I got out of marriage, when I got out of the marriage. So that impacted me for a while. Um, and so just being able to trust God. And so that was the whole transformation for me, was just moving from this 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 brokenness, this self-limiting mindset, to having a whole mindset, but also knowing what I want and being able to having a clear vision of what God has given me and then going after it.
This is so good. It's like, oh man. What I love about it is it's, again, like I said, when I was reading your bio and your newsletter, it's exactly what I preach too. And it's all how God wants us to work. He wants us to be transformed. And that's Romans, 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be
Right.
transformed by the renewing of your mind. So the awareness parts goes in your mind, right? I'm
Mhm.
aware. I know my strengths and weaknesses. I know my doubts and fears, but I'm going to take action anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to pursue and my passion, my vision, my mission in life. And what you said, what I'm taking away from this is that period of the stillness where you wrote your own psalm, is then that when it was when God revealed his will to you, and that you are a child of his, and that he has plans for you.
Right.
And it was written, it was inscribed, the seed was planted in 2015, Derrick. And then we're almost 10 years from that point of when you've written that psalm.
Right.
And if you were to look back, and this is probably one of my last questions I'm going to ask you, because I can go on forever because I'm so
Yeah.
jacked up about who you are and what you're doing, is if you go back to 2015 or even 2012 when you got divorced, but let's stick on the 2015 when you wrote your psalm. Did you envision yourself to be where you are now?
No, not even. Not even. I wasn't
Oh
thinking about
man.
no podcast, even though they said, I had that, it was like revealed to me about evangelism, and you just don't know how that's gonna come out or manifest itself. It's just, you just have to trust the process. But I never forget, Joyce Meyer, she's a powerful woman to me.
Oh yeah, she is.
And I'll never forget, she was in one of her sermons, she was just talking about being bold for God, and there needs to be more people like that. And it just kind of gets to a point where you already know that, one, you're unstoppable. Because I'll get to that in a second, but when you actually recognize and feel, okay, God has called you to do something, whether it's a baker, maybe you could bake the mess out of some cookies, and you bake the best cakes. Man, you need to put that oven to use. Start
Absolutely,
and put
man. I love it.
and feel
It's a
that
good
sweet
analogy
tooth,
though.
you know
It's
what I'm
true. Yeah, it's good.
or you're that mechanic that wouldn't deceive people, who's honest, that people, hey, be that mechanic. But in the meantime, be bold and represent God. And so here we have a voice, and just my personality style. Like if I was to take a disc assessment, I'm a high D, so I'm a driver. But then I have the I'm a high, or my second is a I, so I could go out there and just talk with people. And I'm like, man, I need to use what God has given me. And so now that's one of the whole purposes of this transformation. So who cares what other people think? Because the one who actually cares is God. And that's what I'm doing the work for. And so it just takes you a minute to get to that point. But at the same time, you gotta do what you gotta do. Make it just small steps, building that confidence one day at a time, one day at a time. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm unstoppable. I'm
Dude, and
unstoppable.
that's right there. That's
Yep.
it. I think what everyone needs to hear, and I had to go through this myself, because
Hmm.
anytime you go into a new area
Yeah.
of life, your new niche that you're going into,
Right.
it's kind of scary, or if you're fearful, because the comparison game.
Right.
So you're trying to be perfect, and what we said earlier is you don't have to be perfect, you just have to start. And then when you started getting these small wins, and then you're like, it's a reward system. Like God's telling you, you're in my will. You're doing the
Right.
right thing. You're evangelizing. You're sharing the good news, and you're sharing your gifts to proclaim to everyone.
You are.
So, Derrick, I just give you 110% kudos for what you're doing. Don't stop doing it. I feel like you should write a book about your life, or at least maybe your strategies, how to live a successful life. And it's not about me; it's all about you.
Right.
Why not you? Because I think it's so important that we forget that, though, Derrick, is that some people are so ego based, which the acronym I learned is edging God out.
Yeah.
They forget about they're
That's
there to
good.
love, serve, and care for others.
Uh-huh.
And if you could do that, then you're doing the right work of Christ.
Man, that's good
So,
right there. Edging God out. Oh,
oh well, you can use it.
yeah,
It's
thanks.
not mine, so I can't take claim for that. I can take claim to one, and it's when I said at the end, love, care, and serve. And care is a acronym I came up with. Is if you really care about what you're doing, you're committed to it, you have a really good attitude about it, you
Hmm.
respect those around you, and it's 100% effort,
Ooh,
110% effort.
there you go.
So you can use that one. That's a John
Thank you.
Gravino one. You can
All
use
right on.
that. Oh man, dude, it's so good to have you on today. Any last remarks you'd like to say? And I'll put all your information in the bio
Okay, cool.
and the show notes, and all that good stuff. Okay.
All right. I would say, man, one thing that really kind of helped me get to the next level just with being bold is accountability,
Yeah.
having accountability groups. And so there's a group of us, and man, we'll meet on Sunday mornings, 7:30 to 9. And before we actually kind of share our win and what is something that we were going to be working on throughout the week, we all have to say our own mantra. Just like Muhammad Ali had his mantra, right? Like, I'm the greatest. And that's what he lived by. And so my mantra is a reflection of one, who I am, and it also helps me stick to my processes and what I need to do to succeed in the day. And so I'll share it with you real quick.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah. This is great.
but the main thing is believing it also, because you can have a mantra and don't even believe it, and it's not going to make an impact in your life whatsoever. But mine is, I'm unstoppable. Everything that I need is within me. I have no limitations, and I'm never satisfied. I'm breaking through my own barriers to conquer my day and to execute with purpose. There's no finish line or growth ceiling, and I'm winning daily. This is my movement.
Love it.
Man, you gotta have something to, to actually operate and live by, dude.
Can you put an audio, and I could put play every morning?
Yeah.
Make that. I'm going to be honest with you. Make that on one of your podcasts. Just
Yeah.
make it the mantra.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. and then just have clips of it and just
Right.
share it, because I think it's so important to have an affirmation.
It is.
I have mine every day. It's easy. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Let me use my gifts for your glory, and let your will be done. Every day.
Simple and
Twice a day.
sweet, huh?
Well, yeah, because you know what though? If you have no mantra, you have no mission, you have no vision, you shall perish. Habakkuk 2:2. Come on.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
You have to have the vision. God
You have
gave
to.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, all of them a vision. And whether or not you're obedient to what his will is for you, that's on you.
That's it.
So the more obedience and discipline you have to adhering to the Father's will, guess what? Your gifts become bearings of much fruit.
That's right.
And that's what he wants. He wants his people. That's what I'll end here too. He wants his people to succeed. He wants his people to glorify him and to go out and share the good news, because it's all rooted in love. And John 15:5, apart from me, you can do nothing.
That's it.
Right?
Right.
Wait, apart from me, you can do nothing. So when you go ego, you lose. You say, I'm rooted, I win, because I'm on the winning side, which is the King of all kings. All glory to him. Oh man, Derrick, you get me all jacked up.
That's it, Jay. You got it going.
Oh, don't get me started, man.
That's it.
Oh,
he's going
this
to
is
town.
so good. Well, listen, I'm gonna do something. It's just that I want everyone to listen to Why Not You podcast. You know, when you listen to this episode, share, comment, follow Derrick online on Instagram, all the social media links that I'll share as well.
Cool.
And just know that he's a blessing for everyone he's around, and be part of his circle, because he's going to make you better.
Thank you, John. Yes, sir.
Well, hey, I told you it wasn't a bad class, was it?
I know, right? It wasn't a bad class.
Well, you've been a great student today.
Thank you.
I pray for you. I pray for everything you're doing that God's put on your heart. And this class is dismissed, brother.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, man. Be blessed.
All right, you too, John.
All right, man.